hunter-gatherer with no home, no metal, and no wheel just moved a 16-ton stone uphill, then buried it on purpose. Somewhere else, a city of 200,000 people burned its own temples to the ground and left not one carving of a king who ruled it. And in a cave that supposedly never existed, a story convinced the entire world it had. 10 places, 10 civilizations. Every one of them left something too massive, too precise, or too strange to explain. And every single time, historians disagree in print right now about what actually happened. This isn't the version where aliens did it. It's better. It's the version that's true. Number 1. Sumer Nippur, southern Iraq, 1900 BCE. Picture a mud-brick room stacked floor to ceiling with clay tablets, tens of thousands of them, wedge-shaped script pressed into wet clay while it was still soft, then baked hard by the sun. This is the Ekur, Sumer's holiest temple, and what's written here isn't poetry. It's an org chart for the gods. Anu at the top, distant, barely spoken to directly. Enlil below him, holding the weather and the fate of kings in his hands. Enki, ruler of water, and, strangely, the god who hands humanity knowledge it was never supposed to have. 50 ranked deities under them. A chain of command, bureaucratic, precise. Nothing like the vague sky worship most ancient religions get reduced to in textbooks. Here's the part that should stop you. The fullest surviving list of this pantheon doesn't survive from Sumerian times at all. It comes to us in later Babylonian copies, made after the language itself was already dead. Meanwhile, grain receipts from the exact same shelves survived by the thousands, nearly perfect. It sounds like something got erased. It didn't. Scribes copied administrative tablets constantly, thousands of them every year as training exercises. Religious texts were written far less often to start with. Add one real war, Elamite raiders sacked Nippur around 2004 BCE, and you get exactly this pattern. Rare things surviving rarer isn't a cover-up. It's just what math does to history. And the word carved into those tablets, Anunnaki, has one confirmed meaning in every genuine translation. A rank of gods, not visitors, not astronauts. Every attempt to read it otherwise has been rejected by the scholars who can actually read the language. The real twist isn't a hidden truth. It's this: 4,000 years ago, someone imagined the universe as a filing system with gods as middle management, and that idea alone is stranger than fiction needed to make it. Number 2. Edfu, Egypt. The Ptolemies are carving these walls between 237 and 57 BCE, nearly 3,000 years after the events they describe. The priests here don't claim to be inventing scripture. They say, in their own words, that they're copying something older, a text they call the Specifications. A document from before the pyramids, before Egypt had a single king. It names builder beings called the Shebtiu, credited with raising the first sacred mound out of the retreating floodwaters, and it places their origin somewhere Egyptologist EAE. Raymond, translating this material through the 1960s and 70s, couldn't match to any real location on a map. The Turin King list backs this up. Compiled around 1200 BCE, it doesn't start Egypt's history with its first human king. It starts with a dynasty of gods, then a line called the followers of Horus, ruling for a length of time no mortal calendar could hold. So where's the original? Nobody has ever found it. Not at Edfu, not anywhere. Here's the sober version, and it's still fascinating. Placing gods before kings to justify a throne is something Egypt shares with Sumer, with Greece, with half the ancient world. And the Specifications, citing an older, unseen source, may not be a lost manuscript at all. It may be a literary device, a text quoting a text for authority, the ancient equivalent of citing a source everyone assumes exists but no one checks. Raymond herself read the gaps in these walls as damage, ordinary, not a sentence cut off mid-secret. Nobody has the ending. That part's true. It just isn't proof of a conspiracy, it's proof of how thin the paper trail gets the further back you go. Number 3. Baalbek, Lebanon.
The sheer scale.
3 limestone blocks, each roughly 64 feet long, each an estimated 800 tons. Among the largest stones ever set into any structure on Earth. A 4th stone, even bigger, still sits half-cut in its quarry bed. Abandoned, never freed from the ground it was born in. Rome built a temple to Jupiter directly on top of this platform in the 1st century BCE. And their own engineers, some of the best builders history has ever produced, never once wrote down where the
Ensure
platform underneath it
measurements
came
match the
from.
diagram precisely,
Mainstream
or the keystone
archaeology
will
dates the
fail.
platform to the Roman
I
period.
am checking the
And
wax
here's the
tablet
honest
now.
version. Staggering and impossible aren't the same word. Ancient engineers moved comparably massive stones elsewhere with sledges, ramps, levers, and labor forces numbering in the thousands. The exact math at Baalbek is still being worked out today. A real, open, actively studied engineering question, not a solved one, and not evidence of anything beyond genuinely extraordinary human effort pushed to its absolute limit. Medieval historians recorded local legends blaming giants, or Nimrod, for building it. That's real folklore, but mysterious ruins get giant legends everywhere on Earth. Stonehenge got Merlin. A legend explaining a mystery isn't evidence for the mystery. It's what humans do when the truth goes quiet. Number 4. Teotihuacan, Mexico. The Pyramid of the Sun rises 216 feet above you, the third largest pyramid on Earth by volume. 200,000 people once called this place home, the sixth largest city on the planet in the year 550 CE. 6 centuries of power. And not one ruler, not once, ever let his face be carved into stone. Then one day the temples burn. Here's what's real, published, and genuinely stunning. Archaeologist Linda Manzanilla's research, printed in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015, found the fire concentrated almost entirely in elite ritual and administrative buildings. Ordinary homes nearby were left standing, untouched. No trace of a foreign invasion anywhere in the wreckage. Her conclusion, this was an uprising. The people burned the palaces of the men who ruled them and left their own neighborhoods alone. Let that sit for a second. A city of 200,000 people, invisible rulers, no royal portraits anywhere. And when it finally breaks, its own population walks straight to the seat of power and puts it to the torch, block by block, with surgical restraint. You don't need a hidden myth glued on top of that. A leaderless city burning its own throne room is already one of the strangest true stories in the ancient world. Number 5. Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey, 9600 BCE. T-shaped limestone pillars, some over 16 tons, carved with foxes, boars, vultures, built 6,000 years before Stonehenge, by people with no farms, no pottery, no metal, and no permanent homes. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt started digging here in 1994, and what he found broke the textbook order of civilization completely. Monuments before farming, religion before settlement, everything backwards. For years, every documentary told you the same thing. These enclosures were deliberately buried on purpose, filled with rubble in a ceremony that retired them like a sacred grave. Here's what most of those documentaries never update you on. Right now, this year, archaeologists are fighting about whether that's even true. Structural analysis by DAI architect Moritz Kinzel has found damage patterns that don't look like one deliberate burial event at all. Landslides, natural sediment collapse, a real possibility for at least part of the site. This is not a mystery with a hidden answer someone's sitting on. It's an active argument happening in journals between people who have spent their careers on this hill and still don't agree. That's rarer than a conspiracy. That's honesty in real time about the oldest monument on Earth. Number 6. Nan Madol Pohnpei in the middle of the Pacific, 92 artificial islets. Basalt columns stacked like cordwood, some weighing 50 tons apiece, spread across 200 acres of coral reef. No roads, no sledge tracks. No transport infrastructure for that weight has ever been found anywhere on the island. Local tradition, recorded in detail by ethnographer Paul Hambruch in the early 20th century, names the builders directly. 2 brothers, Alasipa and Alasopa, arriving from somewhere beyond the horizon, who are said to have flown the stones into place using nothing but words of power. Archaeologists read this exactly the way they read comparable legends in Egypt and the Andes, as folk memory of labor so extreme, so far beyond ordinary experience, that the only language left to describe it afterward was magic. That's not archaeologists dodging the question. That's archaeologists taking oral history seriously, as a record of real, staggering human effort, carried forward the only way a culture with no other framework could carry it. Number 7. Baiankaraula Cave. Every other place on this list you could fly to tomorrow. This one you can't, because it may never have existed at all. The story, 1938, a Chinese professor named Kai Pu-te finds a cave on the Tibet-China border. Small skeletons. Hundreds of stone discs, carved with a spiral groove, said decades later to contain an alien language describing a crashed spacecraft and a species that couldn't get home. Here's the part the pulp books leave out. Investigators, including a fellow of the Royal Anthropological Society who personally contacted Chinese academic institutions, found no trace of the professor, no trace of the university department, no disc in any museum anywhere in the world. The earliest version of this story doesn't come from a Chinese archive at all. It comes from a 1962 West German magazine and gets its wings from Erich von Däniken's books afterward. This isn't an unsolved mystery. It's the one entry on this list where people actually looked for the evidence and there wasn't any. Keep that in your pocket, because it's the exact shape every other story on this list refuses to take. Number 8, the Olmec La Venta in San Lorenzo, Mexico. Roughly 900 BCE. An 8-foot stone head stares back at you, carved from a single block of basalt hauled up to 90 miles from its quarry. 17 of these heads exist. No two faces alike. Every one a portrait of somebody specific. We don't even know what these people called themselves. Archaeologists gave them the name Olmec centuries later. On nearby altars, a different image recurs, the Wer-jaguar, a hybrid infant, part human, part feline, held up like something being presented to the world. Researchers including Peter First and Michael Coe have proposed this represents a claimed divine ancestry for Olmec rulers, one influential theory among several. Other scholars read the same imagery as shamanic transformation, not bloodline. And here's what Coe's excavations at San Lorenzo actually found. These specific altars were deliberately smashed in the face, then carefully, purposefully buried. The same pattern shows up again, 300 years later, 60 miles away at La Venta. Real archaeologists have a real name for this: ritual decommissioning, tied to the end of a ruling line, a documented Mesoamerican practice their own descendants kept doing for centuries. And buried near San Lorenzo, one single stone, the Cascajal block, carries 62 symbols in orderly rows. The oldest known writing in Mesoamerica, undeciphered. No second example has ever been found, not before it, not after it. A civilization that carved 100 individual human faces and never once wrote down a single one of their names. Number 9. Tiwanaku 12,500 feet above sea level on the Bolivian Altiplano. The Gateway of the Sun stands carved from a single 10-ton block of andesite. Nearby, at Pumapunku, stone blocks meet at right angles accurate to fractions of a degree. In the year 2000, researchers Jean-Pierre Protzen and Stella Nair tried to replicate that precision using tools known to exist at the time. They couldn't. That's real. That's published. That's still an open question archaeologists are working on today. Then, around 1000 CE, the city collapsed. Sediment cores pulled from Lake Titicaca confirm a severe, sustained drought beginning right at that moment. The farming system that fed a concentrated population at extreme altitude failed. The surplus vanished. The authority that depended on it collapsed with it. Some blocks at Pumapunku were left mid-cut. Abandoned exactly where the work stopped. A society collapsing mid-project, taking its skilled labor and its authority with it all at once. That's not a mystery needing an extra layer. That's just what collapse looks like, carved in stone and frozen mid-motion. Andean tradition says the god on that gateway, Viracocha, walked into the ocean and never returned. That story didn't need the ruins to be true for the people who told it. It's beautiful on its own. Number 10. Ebla Tel Marduk, northern Syria, roughly 2300 BCE. The last days before a fire, more than 17,000 clay tablets sit stacked on shelves about to collapse. This is Ebla, a kingdom nobody outside a handful of specialists had ever heard of before 1974, when Giovanni Pettinato's team found this archive still lying exactly where the burning shelves had dropped it. Paolo Mattii had identified the site a decade earlier, in 1964. What Pettinato's team found here rewrote Near Eastern history. Eblate, a language nobody knew had existed, spoken by a kingdom trading across the region as a contemporary of Sargon of Akkad himself. And just like Nippur, 1,000 miles and centuries away, the administrative tablets survive by the thousands, nearly whole. The religious texts make up a small, fragmented fraction. It isn't a pattern reaching across the ancient world to silence the gods. It's the same math twice. Governments write more receipts than scripture. Every time. Everywhere. Add one real fire, Akkadian conquest, boasted about by Sargon himself in his own inscriptions, and the ratio explains itself. What survives is still remarkable, though. Some of Ebla's religious tablets carry a note from the scribe, copied from an older source. A source that traces 400 miles south, back to Sumer, back to Nippur, back to the very first archive on this list, 10 sites. And at the very end, the thread connects for real, not through a cover-up, through a scribe 4,000 years ago admitting exactly where he got his information. What actually connects these 10 places? Not a hidden hand, not an erased truth, something rarer. Historians standing in front of the evidence right now, disagreeing with each other in public about what it means. Göbekli Tepe's own excavators are debating this decade whether their signature discovery is even correct. Puma Punku's stonework still doesn't have an agreed method behind it. Teotihuacan's uprising is one of the best supported theories in Mesoamerican archaeology, and still just an interpretation of a fire nobody left a confession for. That's not a conspiracy smoothing over the truth. That's what real history actually looks like up close. Certain about the stone, uncertain about the story, and honest enough to say so. And somewhere in the middle of all that honesty sits one story that was never real to begin with, a cave that likely never existed, told so well it fooled the world for 60 years. 9 mysteries still being fought over by people with excavation permits. One story that was only ever a legend wearing a lab coat. That's the version of the past that's actually true. It turns out it never needed help being strange. If this story made you question everything you thought you knew, let us know in the comments. What do you believe really happened? If you enjoyed this journey into history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fablon Stories. Tap the bell icon so you never miss our next expedition into the unknown, because history doesn't always tell the whole story. Sometimes the greatest truths are the ones that were forgotten, and here on Fablon Stories we're just getting started. Until next time, stay curious.